Welcome back, folks. This is the Reverend Redbeard here with Acadia After Dark podcast. I wanted to pop in before the show to let you all know that this one was pre-recorded, and I was joined by a very special guest that I think fans of the Big Cat episode will especially enjoy. I will be back after the show for a couple of updates as well as some news, and we're going to have a quick ad read before we get into this broadcast. I think y'all will enjoy it. It's a friend of the show, so stick around, stay tuned. I'll be back with you later. Enjoy the show.
You like weird stories? You like bizarre accounts? You like horror movies?
Come on down to Pumpkin Hill Radio for all your paranormal, metaphysical, and high strangeness needs. Every Tuesday with host Travis, that's me, and Dawson.
It's me. You ever seen something you can't explain? You ever felt something you can't explain?
Do you have questions that nobody can answer?
You heard a story that made you feel completely mad?
Do you feel like you shouldn't Google what you just saw?
Have you tried to Google it and got nothing?
We might be able to help.
We're looking for it.
That's every Tuesday with host Travis and Dawson, Pumpkin Hill Radio. Come on down.
PHR, baby.
Pumpkin Hill Radio, available on all platforms. Anything else to say?
We'll see you there. Give it a follow. Tell your friends.
Welcome back to the Acadia After Dark podcast. I am Reverend Redbeard, and today I have Gene joining me. Gene, can you say hi to the audience for me?
Hello, everyone.
I had Jean joining me because she happens to be a local. I would call an expert. She said that she's not an expert, but I say she's an expert compared to me. And so I wanted to get her because a few weeks back we had an episode of the show where we were talking about the eastern cougar in Maine and the reports of sightings, despite the fact that according to local authorities, they are apparently extinct. And Jean has been working for some time now. She worked with the local International Cryptozoology Museum based out of Portland. And she has been doing quite a bit of research on the eastern cougar. And I definitely wanted to get some of her takes and some of her stories. So I'm glad to welcome Jean to the show today. Jean, could you tell the audience a little bit about your background and how you got into this?
I've had an interest in cryptozoology for a long time. I actually didn't know there was a word for it. I had my primary interest at the time was Sasquatch. I started at the age of 7 with that fascination and kept it going. I was lucky enough in 2015 to come across a post on Facebook from the International Cryptozoology Museum asking for volunteers. So I went in and interviewed. Lauren was very, I think he was surprised by my knowledge on the subject and stuff, and he was very happy with it. We had kind of a similar story on how we got into it and different stuff at a young age. And as I had started volunteering there, he had mentioned that I should look into the accounts of the mystery cats, because in my area of Lincoln County, there was a high concentration of mystery cat sightings. And when you say mystery cats to me, I automatically think Black Panther. And he's like, no, mountain lions. And I thought he was crazy. We had a little bit of a yes, no on them being not here. He was telling me that the state did not recognize them as being here. And I thought that was crazy. Come to find out, yes, he was right. Although they weren't technically declared extinct until 2018 is when they finally took them off the extinction list, which took them off the endangered species list, and stuff like that. So I started looking into it anyways back in 2015. And I was, going over newspaper articles, different things that I could find on the subject just to find out, because where I had grown up in Mid-Coast Maine, I tell everybody that, when you're a kid, we're close to the water. So a lot of times you don't get like the bears and different stuff. As of now, later years, there are, I mean, there's bears down here, there's moose. But when I was a kid, that wasn't something you would normally see or hear about. But you would get, stories every now and then of, oh, this bear showed up, or, a mountain lion sighting or a moose sighting. And I just found it very strange when I started working there that, wait a minute, yeah, there are mountain lions here. And the more that I looked into it, it was it was just interesting to find out different things. I started looking into like some of the scientific studies that had been done, and the University of Montreal had done one that started in 2001, ended in 2012, and they actually collected a lot of hair samples, and 19 of them, I believe it was 19 of them, I do have the report here somewhere, tested positive for mountain lions. So they decided what they wanted to do was they wanted to break the DNA up and see if they could specify if it was from South America or North America. And they did find that a high percentage of them were from South America. So that being said, they assumed that they were pets or something that, somebody had had, because it's not unusual for people to have them as pets.
Yeah.
It's not, a major thing. It's not like, you're going to find, a ton of them out there. But with my talks with the state biologist, the regional one that I had spoken to, I do know, because he did tell me that there are 4 people in the state that do have them as pets. So that was good to know, because if you have a sighting report, it's nice to know that maybe in the area there could be a pet. I
Right.
couldn't get any more than there are 4 people in the state that have them as pets. I couldn't, I didn't want an exact location, but it would have been nice to have like this county has one or that, just
Sure.
because it makes it a little bit easier. Because if you're driving 45, 50 miles an hour down the road, you're not going to see a fenced in area if you see one, and you could be like, oh my gosh, but it could
Right.
be, somebody's pet. So
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. And even if you just knew the general like area, like you said, if you know somebody in that area is and you happen to see one that's in a fenced in area or something, it's going to be a little easier to tell if it's wild or if it's a local one. Is there, because I know that most people that live in the area, I was, and it sounds like you were kind of surprised to find out that the cougar is extinct in Maine, because I, growing up, assumed that it was just a local animal, but a rare one. It wasn't until I was in grade school was when they were basically like, oh yeah, no, they don't have them in Maine. To which most of us were like, well, we've seen them, or somebody we know has seen them, and things like that. Is that kind of your same experience? Is that they just are
yeah,
local
I mean,
known?
and that's what, well, see, that's the thing is, it was funny because I listened to the episode that you had done prior
Yeah.
on big cats, and I heard about the school incident with your,
Yeah.
one of the classmates and stuff. And what got me was, see, this is before I started looking into it more, but in 1993, there was a bus driver named David, and I think his last name was Sanborn, but I'm not positive. But I was volunteering at the school that he was the bus driver for. And when I get done at the end of the day, because of the area, he would be taking the kids home, from one school, but he'd have to go to another elementary school and pick up more kids.
Yeah.
And so I ended up riding back with him to the other elementary school, because my son was in that school at the time, and it worked out perfect with my volunteering, because I would get there just as he's getting out of class. And I remember him telling me, and this was in 1995 at the time, but he said in 1993 he was headed to the school. It was like 7:35, 7:40 in the morning, and he's coming down over the hill, and he's headed up over the hill towards the school, and off in the pasture, he's like, you would know, he goes, there was this huge cat. He goes, and I'm looking, going, what the heck? This is a mountain lion. And he was describing it to me, telling me, it was just so muscular and just long and sleek. And I remember him telling me that he was telling some of his friends about it, later on, like he could not believe what he had seen. And
Yeah.
they're like, oh, you saw a bobcat. That's all it was a and he looked at them and he tells me straight up, last time I knew, bobcats didn't have long, thick tails.
Yep.
And so it was just, and other people were, would mention their sightings. And it wasn't anything I was recording at the time because this is what it was typically like. Everybody had their own things going on. And every now and then you get somebody going, oh my gosh, I'm driving home to Calais on Route 9 and I'm in Alexander. And at the time, years back, that wasn't built up or anything. Route 9 was like a really long stretch of nothing but woods
Yeah.
and stuff. Over the years, it's kind of, there's a lot built in there now, but he was like, this huge cat just went across the road. And he's like, I'm looking at this thing going, oh my gosh, because it's that tawny brownish tan color. And the thing was just massive. And he pulled over and got out and went looking for it. And he said he couldn't see it after it went into the woodline area. He goes, but he decided to stop when he heard this really low, deep growl.
Oh,
And he
wow. Yeah.
realized that it's not something you should want to chase. Now, getting back to the first story that the bus driver had told me, it was really weird because I did end up writing what he had told me down. So I do have it like documented.
Yeah.
But in 2022, I just did an interview and I screwed up the date because I'm horrible with years. My sighting actually happened in 2022, not 2021. It did happen on April 2nd. It was at 6:07 in the morning, but it was the same stretch of area where
Wow.
the bus driver had his, but it was on the opposite side of the road in the marshy area with the rock wall and the trees. It wasn't
Huh.
in the open field on the other side where the marsh is at the base, and then it's this really big field and a house sitting way up at the top of the hill. And I was just like, wow, because that's just so weird and random to me that it was the same area.
Yeah, it kind of confirms both sightings because when you have something that you can replicate it and it's seen multiple times, that kind of lends you to believe that it probably is something and not misidentification. Especially because, having seen him myself, I've seen him twice. And when you see him in person, you definitely know the difference between a bobcat and a cougar or a mountain lion. Like they're significant size difference. They are a different color, like you said. They have the long tails. I know that that's kind of the predisposition some people have to just dismissing it, but it feels like it's one of those things that I think the people that have seen it know it. Kind of the same deal that a lot of people say when it comes to Bigfoot. It's like, yeah, if you're a skeptic and you've never seen one yourself, it's pretty easy to just almost blow it off. But then if you're a person that has actually seen it, you know what you see. It's a whole different story for them. When you were talking about I remember I was listening to one of the podcasts, and I think it was the one you just did with David from Unexplained Maine there. You had mentioned a couple of things that I thought was really interesting on there. And one of them that I really wanted to ask you about was the whole discussion when it comes to breeding populations in Maine. So part of the thing that I have discussed a couple of times on the podcast, and I even talked about it with him recently, was in Maine, because it's so densely forested and there's these large expanses that are pretty remote, it seems like it's a pretty easy place for animals to kind of hide out, and there's a low animal to human interaction. But then when you look at reports, we're in mid-coast Maine, which is not the most populated, but it's not exactly remote either. And it's surprising that like so many people in this sort of an area see cougars, because to me, I would expect it to be more far removed. So I was wondering, do you have any thoughts on if maybe that sign of like a higher breeding population than maybe the biologists are thinking, or is it just that they happen to really like being near the coast due to like some environmental reason?
I honestly don't know. The state biologists tell you that there is no breeding population, and they're not going to breed in the state. They've got no way to survive because there's not enough caves, is what I was told when I talked to the biologist, which I told him straight up, they don't use caves. I mean, they might, but they don't. I have done enough work on this. Like I said, the Mountain Lion Foundation is one of those, that's a great resource. And even Panthera, there's a bunch of different ones, but even when you look it up, they prefer knocked over trees. They prefer thickets. They prefer something where there's like an enclosure, but it doesn't have to be like a cave. So they want to be able to get out. If you're in a cave, you're kind of trapped,
Sure.
sometimes. And for me, I was just like, this is crazy, because they use what they need, what's a necessity. And even so, New Brunswick, in Canada, and even, Maine and all the other eastern states say there are no breeding populations, though there are hundreds of reports throughout the eastern states of these big cats. And they are, I know that some do come from the West. I mean,
Sure.
the one that was killed in Connecticut, I
Yeah.
believe in 2011 there, that one traveled a year and a half from, the foothills of South Dakota and
Yes, I
got to
remember.
Connecticut, but it kind of like zigzagged and, I mean, it backtracked it, it's just, if you're looking, with the populations the way they are, they have such a large territory that, if you have a state that's got a high breeding population and stuff, these male cats, when they get to be, considered adults at a year and a half, they have to move on. They can't stay in that area. Okay. Males do not take to having other males in their territory well at all. Although it has been documented at times that, you will see more than one in an area together, but it's very rare.
Yeah.
And for me to say that there's no breeding population, knowing that, that there are mountain lions in New Brunswick, even though they say there's no breeding population, there are, they do have them. And other states, even in Canada, I mean, I'm sorry, these cats don't know borders. They're not going to look and go, oh, I'm at the Maine border, I can't go any further.
Yeah.
I can't,
Where's your
okay,
passport?
so, yeah. It doesn't, it's like, if you're coming over, from another, oh, it's Pennsylvania, I can't step in here, or it's just,
Right.
I don't know. And these cats are very elusive. I mean, even in states with high populations, I believe it was Wyoming, I had an article from, and even the Inland Fisheries and Wildlife at the bottom of the article will say, if you see one and it does leave tracks, it doesn't mean they're going to be able to find it. These things are so elusive. It's very hard to keep track of them. That's why they use dogs a lot of times when they're going to collar them or whatever. Even the hunters use dogs because they're very elusive. They're very hard to find. So
Sure. I mean, there's a reason they call them ghost cats, right? So it all makes sense. The thing that I find interesting about it is that the local officials, the biologists, the game wardens, etc., even when I spoke to them years ago, and this has been, I mean, probably 10 years or more since I talked to somebody, fisherman, and when I was talking to them about it, they were pretty elusive about even answering the questions. You seem to have gotten a little further with them, and I know you had to be kind of persistent to get anybody to correspond with you. Why do you think they're so hesitant to even consider the option? I understand they keep saying and reinforcing, they're saying, there's no population, they're transient, they come through from other states. And hey, you're right, they do move on and they have huge territories, so it makes sense that maybe some of them are, but with just as many sightings as we have, it feels like there's got to be something more to it. And why do you think that they really are so persistent in wanting to shut down any possibility of it?
Yeah, well, like I said, when I talked to mine, I brought up that subject and stuff. And he literally told me that he has been out west with the scientist and the other, inland fisheries and different people that actually deal with this stuff. And he's just saying, they actually, I think he said at one point they did a flyover over Maine just to see what the terrain was like. And it's not inhabitable for mountain lions is what, he said.
Huh.
So, I mean, he kind of danced around stuff, but I found that a lot of people that I talk to that don't really talk about their sightings and don't report them to wardens or to anybody in inland fisheries and wildlife because of the fact that they're told it's not what you saw. It's a mistaken identification. And with talking with a couple of, because I've talked to newspaper journalists, I've talked to a ton of people. One of the journalists actually he used to work for Lincoln County News. He has another job now, but he was very gracious to actually do phone conversations with me so we could go over stuff. And he said, and I did bring this up to the state biologist, but he told me, he goes, when he was doing his articles on, people having said, he didn't realize the outpouring. I mean, there was like a ton of people that reached out to him about the stuff. And he said, well, I'm going to talk to, the wardens and stuff. And he kept getting that's not what people saw. It's a misidentification. It's, a dog, something else. And he goes, the answers are always the same and it's always robotic.
Yep.
So I brought that up to the biologist and he goes, I don't think we sound robotic.
It's not a good defense.
I'm like, but he also told me too, if you have a sighting, it's better to report it to the state biologists than it is to game wardens because they're more there to enforce the hunting laws than they are, hunting and fishing laws than they are for this stuff. And when you do report it, you have to have like an exact location because if you tell them it's on such and you saw it on such and such a road, that road could be 50, 60 miles long and it's like looking for a needle in a haystack.
Right. Yeah. And as fast as they're able to move through an area, you're basically just chasing your tail or their tail, depending on how it is. I know every once in a while I'll see videos or I'll see trail cam pictures in the area that people claim come from Maine and are showing wildcats. The ones that I've seen, I've only seen a couple that I believe are legitimately cougars. Have you seen any that you think are authentic in the general like Maine area?
I have two actually.
Yeah.
One of them was I ended up printing off because I had somebody had posted it on one of the social media platforms on Facebook. Okay.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I'm having 4 or 5 people tag me into this post. So I reached out to the guy. I went up to his property. I checked it out. I took reenactment photos from where his trail cam was. The state Inland Fisheries and Wildlife said it was not. It was something else. I'm not seeing how it could be anything else. What I'm looking at is a photo of a cougar. And the reason that I say that is because when I did the reenactment photos and you look at the photo where this large cat was, even though they'll still say it's not a cat.
Yeah.
You've got these trees that are standing there. While in the reenactment photo, there are the trees, but there's also a 2-foot stump you can't see.
Oh, so it's obscuring the stump then.
Yeah. And so when I went to I talked to him over the phone before I went up to talk to him, and his cousin got a photo on his trail cam a month earlier, and he sent that to me because his cousin wouldn't send it in because the thing is actually like in the tall grass and it's kind of like slinking, almost like it's stalking something, and you can't see the tail. I'm telling you, by the way that the muscles, the shoulders, the hunch was just massive. And I did show those to the state biologist when I was there. He told me the first one, no. He said the second one was definitely a possibility, but he would not verify that, he would say it was, but he said he would believe that one before he would believe the other one. And yeah, I mean, there was, when I was watching or listening to the other episode that you have on YouTube, one of the photos that you used, when I saw that, I was like, oh my God, that's the hoax.
Is it? Okay, so that's one that I was pointing to.
The one where the mountain lion is in, like, it looks like somebody's backyard.
That's what I
with
was
little
like.
tiny trees.
Yeah.
It was a newspaper article out of central Maine. Okay. And I
Okay.
saw that and I'm like, how in the heck can you deny that that's mountain lion? The reason that you can deny it is because that picture actually came from Vancouver. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And it has been passed around to each state. I've actually had two people send it to me telling me, one told me that his cousin got the picture off his trail cam in Connecticut. I had another gentleman when I was working at the museum come in and tell me that, when he found out what I did, he's like, oh, well, I've got this awesome picture of one that I took in my backyard. And he was saying it was, where he lived in Maine.
Yeah.
And I just looked at the thing and I just kind of shook my head and went, okay. Yeah, okay.
Wow.
Because and when the state biologist I spoke to, he was actually the one who cracked that photo and proved that it came from, British Columbia, Vancouver,
kidding.
British Columbia.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because I was like, that one was one of those ones that was almost too good to be true, and I kind
It
of had a
was too good to be
suspicion.
true. Yeah.
Yeah, never get them that clear. I wish we did. So when it comes to, I know when you first we're talking to Lauren about the cats in Maine, you had the thought, and it's actually similar to the first thoughts I had when I was researching large cats in Maine, is when they brought up mystery cats or big cats, I also thought of black panthers because I had heard reports of people seeing those throughout Appalachia up into Maine. Have you heard any reports of that you feel are authentic in the Maine area? Or
I have heard stories of them. I'm very skeptical with that because right now, as of scientifically proven, there is no such thing as a black panther because that would be a mountain lion that's got a condition called melanism. So it's a melanistic mountain lion. They, jaguars and leopards have that, and they do call them black panthers, but you can still see their spots. But
yes.
I have had people tell me that they have actually when I was talking to Dave, and I've said it on another podcast too, is there was a couple of articles that V. Paul Reynolds did for the Northwood Sporting Journal. I
Mhm.
spoke with him via phone a couple times and emailed back and forth, and he told me to, pull up all the stuff that he'd written up, and there was actual people that would write down, their sightings, say either this is, oh, there's none here, or they would actually post their stuff, but they would do it. Some would do it anonymously,
Yeah.
others wouldn't. And one gentleman who lived in California in
Mhm.
mountain lion country had seen plenty of tracks, never seen one. But when he moved to Maine and he was fishing up north, and I want to say it was around the, what the heck is the name of that pond? I think you said it at one point in that other interview there. It's
Oh, geez. I'd have to look at my notes
up
real
before
quick.
Holton and stuff. Is it Great Pond or Grand Pond or
It
something
might
like that?
be.
But
Yeah.
he actually had a sighting of what he said was a black cougar, a black mountain lion.
Wow. And that's, I mean, I was kind of skeptical of those ones for the same reason as knowing that scientifically they don't exist. And it's even more unlikely than like finding a normal cougar up here. Um, is there any like possibility that it could be that it was at one point or another somebody's pet that escaped and then either is still on the loose somewhere or potentially bred with another, large cat in the area or something? What are the
I
possibilities of that?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I know that at years back, a friend of mine, her and her brother, when they were younger, she actually has pictures of them with what, she called a black panther, and it was a jaguar, but it was at a zoo, and you could actually do photos with this thing. It was just a
Oh,
small
wow.
one. It's hard to say because to me, if it's a pet, you're going to be devastated if it gets loose, and you're going to be trying to do whatever you can. And the only way it would be done is if it was illegally brought in. And that was one of the things that I brought up with the state biologist, because I remember I watched a video of him doing kind of like a town hall talking about the mountain lion sightings, and he was deputizing everybody, but he was saying how he had been part of a siege on, big cat. And so when I talked to him, I was like, okay, so you said this, and I have never been able to find a documented article, anything on a big cat being sieged as an illegal pet in the state. And he goes, nope, nope. He goes, I have to reiterate. And he was telling me the story. It was actually somebody who purchased one, went through the paperwork. She had asked one of the a rescue that's no longer, going, if they would keep it there until she finished getting the enclosure built, because it has to be specific. You have to, dot all your I's, cross all your T's. And when she finally got it done, the person who was running it, he refused to give her back her cat. So they had to step in, and that's what he was saying when he was talking about that, is he had to make sure that she actually was able to get the cat. So
Sure. So
yeah.
that's more settling a civil dispute than it is trying to seize a animal. Wow, that's still interesting that would happen. So you've been pretty busy. You've been doing a lot of interviews and podcasts. I've gotten to listen to a couple of them. Tim Banal there at Banal of America was the one that pointed me to a direction, and he recommended your work. Yeah, we were talking about the big cats on the episode I did with him, which actually just came out today, and he had mentioned I was saying I'm trying to get more, more locals that are knowledgeable in the stuff that I'm researching. And he's like, well, have you seen Gene's work? And I'm like, apparently not. And so then he told me, told me what you were doing and everything. So I definitely wanted to check it out. And I see that you have a Facebook group going now. So can you tell me a little bit about that? What's the plan with that?
I started that up last year. It was one of those things that I just was contemplating for a while, and then I decided, you know what, because everybody kept telling me, you need to do this, you need to do this. I wanted to create a group where you could have discussions on this topic. I could post like the scientific work. I could post like different stuff, like because Florida reintroduced panthers. They've been thriving down there. But still, again, you've got the traffic and the highways, and they did have a large number of deaths with the panthers down there this year. Last year. But I wanted it to be a safe place for people who have had, sightings. If they want to discuss it, they can. If they have questions, they can ask. The only thing that I ask is when people do, come on and check it out, if you want to be a member, please answer the questions, because I leave it all mountain lion related. I don't do, like, I know I have like a festival coming up, and I do a lot of podcasts. I don't even post those on there. It's mainly to be mountain lion related. I mean, there's a few bobcat things too, but I mean, they're all, the big cats. They're actually considered big small cats because they don't do roaring. They purr like a house cat. So
yes, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I haven't yet joined the group. I wanted to. I was checking it out earlier, and I was like, I'm gonna wait until after we get to, so I can hear a little more of the info on it, because I really like the idea of it, and it is important that people can have that place for discussion, because in a lot of online spaces, especially ones that do open up themselves to discussion about that, it's such a melting pot that a lot of people don't feel safe actually talking about their experiences. I mean, I went years without really talking to anybody about experiences I had until I got more comfortable with just, I guess, in a way, not caring what people thought of what I was telling them. But I see that a lot of people do have a hard time with that. So I'm glad that somebody is making that space for people to discuss this stuff, because I do think it's important. And sometimes it's just about being able to talk about it. If you have that experience and then you kind of bottle it up, or you're told to dismiss it, or you're told you have to live with that. And it's hard whether you're talking about you experiencing a big cat, or you've seen a Sasquatch, or you've seen a ghost. If the person's experienced that and they believe it to be true, having that space to be able to talk about it is really, in a way, therapeutic. So it's good that they have that through what you're creating there. You've been doing the podcast. You said you got a festival coming up. Any plans for doing like anything more with the International Museum, or any like plans for what you're
Uh,
doing this year?
yeah, no, I worked for the International Cryptozoology Museum for 9 years.
Oh, wow.
I ended up leaving last year. It was because I'm on the mid coast, so it was either an hour and a half to get to work, one way, and then I was also working at the Bangor location. They had a bookstore there while they were while the renovations for the new place was being done, and it was just a lot of travel. A lot, and it just kind of started wearing on me, and it
Yeah.
wouldn't, and because of the time with the travel and stuff, I wasn't getting a lot done with my research. So I have just a job closer to home. It's part-time, and it allows me to be able to get out into the field more, because I'm old school. So when I set up my trail cams, they're not ones that shoot photos to my phone. I leave them out there for 2, 3 months to a time. And then I go out and get the SD cards, check them, put new ones up, and I go to different areas, and I try to keep it, because like in my area, there is a high concentration. We also have some very big bobcats.
Yeah.
The bobcats in the state biologist and I agree, are larger than any bobcats we've ever seen before. They are big bobcats. But and then I can look for tracks and stuff, and it's just that way there. I feel like I'm getting something done, along with, still collecting, stories, because when I come across somebody that actually has something interesting, I have no issue. I will direct message them.
Yeah.
Sometimes I get answers. Sometimes I get ghosted, which is fine, because some people, like we said, don't really feel comfortable discussing it. But
Mhm.
I figure I will at least put it out there. And with a group that I've started, I want to I'm using it to actually document sightings for people that have seen the stuff.
Yeah.
I want to get, more people involved if they want.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I see I was checking out, I added you on Instagram earlier, so I was able to see some of the field work you've been doing there. As somebody that's been in research and also doing field work here or there myself, any advice you have to people that want to do field work, especially where you do stuff that's actually, like I said, as you said, using trail cams, going out and knowing areas that you can look in, whether it be for big cats or anything else? Do you have any like advice to people that are getting into the field of research?
Um, Look into stuff. Look, like, it doesn't matter what you're looking for, Bigfoot, um, big cats, freaking lake monster, whatever. Just figure out where, these sightings are happening. Take time. When I do the Sasquatching stuff, I end up going out a couple times to an area and checking it out thoroughly before I do anything, just because I want to make sure it's going to be a good area. Nothing's going to get messed with,
Yeah.
different things. I'm very thorough about that. I am also, when I go out, because I did Bigfoot stuff for a gentleman in Holden, which is also, there's been some sightings a lot. I've gotten reports out of there as well. So that was one of those things that got me with your other story. But he was adamant, because he knew that I was doing the Sasquatch stuff, but I was also doing my big cat. And he was adamant that when I am out during the day, I have to wear sunglasses on the back of my head. Because where big cats are sneaky,
Yeah.
they won't know that you can't see them, because they're going to see that you've got glasses, and it'll throw them off. But I
Huh.
haven't had that issue. I don't worry so much, because usually those animals, even bears and stuff, they will scatter at noise and stuff. I do carry a big knife with me. I'm not
Mhm.
going to lie,
Yeah.
just for
Oh, yeah.
protection, just in case. But I try to make sure that I'm comfortable with what I do. I don't go into anything, I want to say, half cocked. It just
Sure.
so.
Yeah, safety first with all that stuff, as always. I mean, especially you walk around the woods up here enough, you kind of always know what to expect to a certain degree. But I see some people that just don't seem to be prepared or have really a good mindset or healthy respect for it. So that's valuable. I appreciate your input there. Another thing, when I was looking at your Instagram, that I just wanted to bring up, and I know Tim had brought it up before. I see you're a wrestling fan, and
I'm actually going to be watching some wrestling when we're done.
Nice. Yeah, it's that night, Wednesday. So I just wanted to pick you over because I saw your Damian Priest Christmas gifts on your Instagram from your kids, and I was like, she likes the spooky wrestlers like I do, because I'm a big fan of whatever it happens to be. It's always usually the spooky, supernatural ones. I grew up loving the Undertaker and Papa Shango back in the day.
I was Kane. I was the Kane fan. My sister was the Undertaker fan, so it was great. And then my son was the Papa Shango. He loved Papa Shango.
Oh yeah, that was my guy.
And the Boogeyman. He loved the Boogeyman too.
Oh, I forget about him sometimes. Yes, I love all of them. So I see just on a thing the other day, because I know when Tim was talking to you, you said you're a big AEW and House of Black fan. What do you think about Malachi leaving? And now
and this is funny. I was just talking to my daughter about this today, because Chris Jericho, I follow him on all the platforms. I've gone to see Fozzy a couple times. So but I follow Chris. I call him the triple threat. He can wrestle, he can sing, and he has his own podcast called Talk is Jericho, which is amazing. But he had posted Malachi's leaving and stuff, and people were putting in the comments, oh, he's going back to WWE. He's going to ruin his career. They're going to use him for 6 months. And somebody else put down, and they made a valid point. Okay, this man, and I like Malachi. I really do. I liked him when he was Aleister Black in WWE. But his wife is in WWE. He's in AEW. They work separate schedules, so they never get to see each other. So you can't blame the man for wanting to be able to spend some time with his wife.
That's it. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I've always looked at it as it is a job. And yeah, they're entertaining us, but I do think that people kind of forget that aspect, is that they're gonna, regardless of what company they're in, they got to do what's best for them in their careers. That's kind of where I'm at with Malachi, is like, as much as I love him with Buddy and with Brody and House of Black, and now they got Julia with them, and it's just a cool little. She's so awesome.
Julia,
Aura, she's so young and she's got such presence. It's so cool.
Yes.
But yeah, it was just one of those things. When I heard you guys talking about it, I was like, yeah, I gotta see what she thinks of that, because that was like a news story that this week I've been saying to my wrestling friends, I'm like, I will believe it that the day he shows up in a WWE ring, which now is going to be really confusing, because now the lights go out. You got like 5 different people that could show up at any given point in time nowadays.
Yeah.
But I'll believe it the day he shows up and he's wrestled for like 6 months and they've strapped him with a belt. Then I'll be like, oh, he's in WWE now.
I knew he was going to be once they changed the name of House of Black to the Hellhounds.
Yeah,
because they said that Brody had gone to trademark a new stable name, and that's when I realized that Malachi was gone.
Yeah,
and
it's
it was
really
sad
real.
because, I mean, like I said, I didn't think WWE used him enough. I was happy when he left. I thought AEW did great with him, and then he just decided to leave. But all in all, it's his choice. And, sometimes, I'm sorry, family comes first,
Yeah, always.
It's
for
family
real.
comes first.
I definitely agree there. And I'm the same way when it comes to that. I appreciate what he's done. And I want the wrestlers, they are great. I just want them to be happy too at the end of the day. So we're on the same page there. So I won't keep you too much longer, but before we do go, wanted to ask you, because I see your shirt, P22. I've heard a lot about P22. Maybe you could tell my audience a little bit, because I think they'd enjoy hearing a little bit.
All right. P22, at 1.5 years old, crossed 2 major highways, the 495, and I can't remember the other one, in California. He made it safely across both, which is very unusual, and ended up in Griffith Park, which is in LA. And it is a park that has an 8-mile radius. Has thousands of people that show up every day to hike, bike, picnic. They put on plays at night there. They do all kinds of stuff. Well, when they found him in there, they collared him and they put him back, which is very unusual that they would do that. But he had made a home there, so they put him back. He lived there for 10 years and he passed away in 2022. I have my tattoo, my P22 tattoo. I don't know if you can see it, but
Yeah, it's a beautiful piece of art.
yeah, the gentleman did a fabulous job. But he ended up getting hit by a car and it ended up hurting organs. He had a cracked skull. He ended up starting going after pets in the neighborhood, and they actually found him in some woman's backyard. I do know that because I actually talked to a woman at the Cryptozoology Museum who was from LA, and we were having this awesome talk on P22. She lived in the same area, never saw him once the entire time that he lived there.
Wow.
But the warden service came door to door because he was collared and told people to stay in their homes. They went to the house that he was actually in the backyard. The woman was on the phone and they're knocking on the door and she's like, "Excuse me, I'm on the phone." And they're like, "Excuse me, you have a mountain lion in your backyard."
Oh, wow.
But in the 10 years that he was there, he never hurt anybody. There was pictures of him on people's ring cams. There's a famous photo of him that a National Geographic photographer took of him just walking along a ridge below the Hollywood sign. He ate deer, raccoons, everything. And there was one gentleman who lived close by in some condominiums, but because the area is so small, he could time when P22 would be coming through. So he always knew when he had photos of him and stuff.
Wow.
And it was just one of the sweetest stories because there is a major fear when it comes to mountain lions. And there should be. I mean, they are wild animals, you know, but we can coexist. And he kind of taught that area that you can coexist with these with big cats, you know. There is a fear. It should be a natural fear, but it shouldn't be a fear that makes you think that they need to die, because that's what a lot of people see or hear the word mountain lion. It's like, oh my God, got to protect my family, got to protect. Usually if you see them, they're passing through, you know. It's you will have some issues. I mean, there are issues with, you know, juveniles getting kicked out by mama too soon. They didn't learn how to hunt properly, or you get them where they're old, like P22 got old and he went after the easiest meals, which were cats and chihuahuas. And if you ever get a chance to look up on YouTube, Rainn Wilson they did a P22 celebration. Rainn Wilson did a song called P22. It was the best song because he actually put cougar poo in it.
I will have to look that up. That sounds fantastic. I'm a big music fan. I actually host a radio show too, so I'll definitely be checking that out. Yeah, that's such a striking story, and it really does say a lot because 8 miles is not a large area, and for an animal like that, the fact that you'd have people that live right there and never even encountered it, but then you have other people that see it and interact with it on a regular basis and have nothing negative to say about it. And I do agree with you that a lot of people with not just mountain lions and other animals, people don't have this ability to have nuance when they see an animal. It's a wild animal, and we should have a healthy respect for them, obviously.
Yeah.
But a lot of people have that knee-jerk reaction to have fear and to like react in a visceral way, which partially is understandable, but it's also something that we kind of need to have that knowledge of. We're part of their environment now more than ever, and we are to a degree encroaching on their territories. You know, P22 crossing 2 highways and ending up in that park and then making it home for 10 years and then not really having any problems coexisting, I think should be a message to a lot of people that hear that story, that we are capable of doing that. In Maine, we're forced to interact with nature more than most. I think that P22 was one of those examples of where up until the end, you know, when he was injured and sick and not able to provide for himself, he obviously had no fear or no ill intent towards humans in any way. And even in the story for my video, that was one thing I wanted to convey, because you see a million videos online where people are like confronted by mountain lions and stuff. More often than not, it seems the mountain lion is more wanting to get away from them, or trying to go where it's going to just get away, not so that they're chasing them. It's trying to just remove them from its space. And I think that that's a story that really exemplifies that. And thank you for sharing it. Anyways, not to ramble too long, but before we do go, any thing coming up that you'd like to promote, or anywhere people can find you if they want to learn more about your work and the things you do?
They can find me on Facebook, on Instagram. If anybody has anything they'd like to say or any questions, they can direct message me on Messenger. I will answer, questions. I'm willing to talk to anybody that, wants to discuss the topic. I also have my group, the Eastern Ghost Cat Research Group, on Facebook. It is a private group, so you will, have to answer the questions to join it and stuff. But other than that, no, I think I'm good.
Hey, well, hey, I will make sure to link those in the description on the video and the podcast version, so anybody that wants to go check out what Gene does for work. And I want to thank you especially for joining me today. It's been a great conversation. I've learned a lot, and I hope that the audience does too. I really appreciate the work that you're doing and the advocacy you're doing to bring attention to that here in Maine. I think it's important work that you do, and just keep on doing it, please. I appreciate you.
All right, thank you.
All right. Well, I will be ending this episode. I will catch up with y'all next week. Same time, same place as always. As always, keep your linens lit. Stay safe out there, folks. Welcome back, folks. Reverend Redbeard here. I just wanted to pop in before the end of the show to say my goodbyes and to give a couple of updates. Number one, going forward, we are going to be pre-recording our podcast episodes, so there will no longer be a live stream on Thursdays, at least for the immediate future. Just kind of making it harder to work into the schedule of everything else, and I think this will alleviate some space. So if you enjoyed the live show, feel free to let me know. We will still do live streams, just not on Thursdays. And aside from that, I'm going to be on a couple of podcasts coming up. I just was on Tim Banal's episode of Banal of America, where we talked about the Palmyra Wolves and a bunch of other stuff. And I was also on a new episode of Broadcasting Seeds. More info to come on those when they come up, if they haven't already. I think the Tim Banal one would have yesterday. And aside from that, we're going to be going ahead and doing more stuff on YouTube. For some reason, the shorts content is getting promoted and not the long form content. Trying to figure that one out. But if anybody is wondering why it's not getting in their feeds, its algorithm hates us. That's pretty much the whole explanation. Anyways, I will be back next week with another pre-recorded episode. So as a reminder, we won't be live on YouTube as usual. Nonetheless, we do plan on doing some more stuff again soon. I'll be back with you. Y'all stay safe out there.